to Friday Night Conversations. Good to have you back again. Got a great show lined up for you. We have Miranda Hundley on again. We're going to be talking more about the Arthur Smith murder, and we're going to talk about different theories about that murder. So let's go ahead and bring Miranda on. Hello, Miranda. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm glad to have you here tonight. Thanks again for being on.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So let's go ahead and get into it. Last time we talked about the Arthur Smith murder and how different people had different opinions and theories about what happened. So tonight we're going to start out by talking about the Bruce and Sheila Lyle theory. And Sheila was the daughter of Arthur Smith,
Yes.
and Bruce was her husband.
Yep.
Uh, and again, we're going to be looking at this part of this. Uh, Actually, it was a part of an investigation done by Mary Mason. She's a private investigator, and it's just some things that she put together. So the Bruce and Sheila Lyle theory. I'm going to read that. It says Bruce and Sheila Lyle believe that Arthur Smith was murdered by Arthur's wife, Mary Ann Smith, and her lover, Belle Fountain police officer Dean Ramsbottom. So let's just talk about that for just a moment before we get anywhere else. There are a lot of people that actually believe in that theory, aren't they?
Yes. There's a lot of pretty good theories out there, but that
Yes.
is one of the more popular ones.
Yeah. And the next sentence says the Lyles, although friendly with Mary Ann, always felt that she married Arthur as a meal ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had money and she wanted money, right?
Yes. Yeah. Arthur was he was pretty well established. He worked on the railroad for quite a while, which that's pretty good money. And then becoming the manager of Rinks.
Yeah. It says Mary Ann Smith had been married twice before and was considerably younger than Arthur. Now, do you know what happened to her first two husbands?
I think it was just basic failed marriages because Kathy seemed to have a pretty good relationship with her dad.
Okay. So they didn't wind up mysteriously dead nowhere.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. And she got married a time or two after this also, correct?
I think I only remember one other marriage, but I could be wrong. I didn't really follow up too much with what Marianne did after the murder.
Yeah. Now, is she still alive?
I believe so, yes.
Wow, she has to be really, really old.
Yeah. I believe her and Kathy are both living in South Carolina today.
Okay. And it says Sheila Lyle speculated that Mary Ann became pregnant intentionally so she could get him to marry her. So did they have a kid, the two of them?
Arthur and Marianne?
Yeah.
Yes, they had one son who was 5 years old at the time of Arthur's death.
Okay. So where's he at now?
I am not entirely sure. So when I spoke to Sheila about it, Sheila said she wasn't able to keep in contact with the little boy. And for some reason I can't think of his name. It's in my video. But Sheila, I don't know if it's Marianne did not let Sheila have a relationship with the little brother. But all contact was kind of lost from that.
Yeah. Yeah. It says the Lyles believe that the physical evidence supports their entire theory of the incident, and the details are further explained in the attached memo of their interview. Uh, I'm not sure if I've seen that attached memo. I don't recall that. Um, and the physical evidence they were talking, what do you think they're talking about there? The physical evidence they believe supports their theory.
Um, the physical evidence, as in, Mary Ann had made like the knockwurst for dinner, and that there was undigested knockwurst in Arthur's stomach when Arthur was always known to go home and he would take his shoes off a certain way and eat dinner no matter what time he got home from work. So the fact that he had the undigested food in his stomach was, evidence that he came home in their eyes. Also, the way that he would take his shoes off was he would untie I think it was his right shoe. He would untie it with his hands, and then he would use his foot to kick the other shoe off. And at the crime scene, Arthur's shoes were taken off, and one of his shoes was untied, the other was not untied. Kind of like he had just taken them off at the front door.
Yeah.
So that would be two physical evidence. Another would, I'm guessing they would be talking about how decomposed his body was compared to the temperatures of outside for those 10 days. He should have been way more decomposed than what he was.
Yeah, that really remains a mystery right there.
Yeah.
So were his shoes placed by the body?
Yes, they were placed by the body.
Now that seems strange, doesn't it?
Yeah. Also, his socks looked fresh, clean.
Yeah. So it kind of looks like they put the shoes there just to convince people that the body was Arthur's.
Honestly, I was like, they probably completely forgot to, like, because it looked like he had been redressed. I'm like, they probably just forgot the shoes and had to go back to the crime scene and drop the shoes off, because why wouldn't they put that back on the body? But I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess I have my doubts about that being Arthur's body anyway. And
Yeah.
that's my theory. Uh, so that could have been, the further evidence that it was George's body. It says, according to the Lyles, on the night of the murder, Arthur went home as usual and ate dinner.
Mm-hmm.
They do believe that he went home and ate the dinner.
Yes, yeah, because it was in his stomach. Like, how else did it get there?
Yeah, but didn't they also sell that at the diner?
They did. However, Arthur wasn't known to eat dinner at Rinks. He was always one to go home to eat dinner. So that could also, be some type of premeditated thing with Mary Ann. She knew Arthur was going to come home and eat dinner, so like she can't make meatloaf if they don't sell it at Rinks.
Yeah. Now his body, there never was an autopsy, right?
Yes, there was an autopsy.
Oh, there was an autopsy?
Yes. Yep.
So he wasn't poisoned. We know he wasn't poisoned then, right?
Yes, he wasn't poisoned.
So it says, while there, he and Mary Ann got into an argument either about Mary Ann's relationship with Ramsbottom and or about Mary Ann's daughter who Arthur knew was stealing from Rinks.
Yeah, he was in the middle of pressing charges on Mary Ann's daughter.
Yeah.
Kathy.
Now, was it well known around town that Arthur that Mary Ann and Ramsbottom were having an affair? Was that well known?
I am not entirely sure. Sheila said she didn't find out about it until after the fact.
Sheila didn't?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that being such a small town, I would think that everybody would know about it,
Yeah.
What's the population of Bell Fountain? I mean, it's only about what, 13,000 or something like that?
I am not sure. It is very small.
Yeah. And it was probably smaller back then, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. It's about 14,000.
14,000, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the population of the entire Logan County was less than the population of the city I live in. And I don't live in a big city,
Yeah.
So Mary Ann could have got into an argument with Arthur about her affair with Ramsbottom. That's plausible.
Yes, that is.
And Mary Ann's daughter, Kathy, she was stealing from Reeks. And Arthur had talked about taking her to court or having her arrested, correct?
He had pressed charges, and the day after Arthur went missing was the day that Kathy was supposed to go talk to the police about the charges that were being pressed on her.
Yeah.
So the timing was pretty convenient.
Yeah, it was. So Mary Ann hit Arthur with a blunt object and knocked him out, okay? Now, there was evidence on his head that he had been hit with a blunt object also?
Yes.
Okay. And I can see where that might knock him out. Now, was he sitting in a recliner? Is that what he normally sat in?
I have no idea.
Because if you're to lean back in a recliner and if it's not sitting against the wall, it would be easy for somebody to come behind you and pop you on the head.
Yeah.
So then Mary Ann panicked and called Ramsbottom, who helped her clear the garage enough to get her Chrysler sedan in, bind Arthur's hands and feet with wire found in the garage, and put Arthur's body in the trunk. Well, that sounds pretty desperate, I guess. And also, they obviously had no intention of turning themselves in, I mean, they didn't say, well, he had an accident or something like that.
Yes.
So was the trunk of Mary Ann's car, was that ever investigated to see if there's blood or anything?
It was not. It was a very large vehicle, the way Sheila described it.
Yeah.
And it could never fit into the garage. So when Sheila went to go talk to Mary Ann about what was going on, Mary Ann had the garage cleaned out and her car parked in the garage, which that's never happened before. So why is it, a priority right now?
Yeah.
And then also the next part about Arthur's hands and feet being bound up with wire. In Jimmy Rogers' statement, Jimmy Rogers said that he stole wire from Rink's department store to tie up Arthur's hands and feet. But the wire that Arthur's hand and feet were tied up with, that was not sold at Rink's department store, but Arthur did have that wire at his house because he was working on a boat.
Okay.
So that's where Jimmy Rogers' story didn't make any sense, because if you stole that from Rink's, well, where did you, steal it at from Rink's? Because Rink's didn't sell that, but Arthur did have that at his house.
Yeah. Well, nothing Jimmy Rogers said made any sense.
No, it didn't.
I can't believe they actually sold that to a jury.
Yeah.
Yeah, the jury had to be really, really intimidated and threatened or something.
Yeah.
So Marianne and Ramsbottom drove down the Township Road 179, which is the shortcut between the Smiths home and the Lyles home, and pulled into a U-shaped driveway off the main road. Okay, have you been on that road, Township Road 179?
Yes, I did. Actually, after I talked to Sheila, I drove past it. There's houses there now.
Okay. Now, have you seen the bean field that the body was found in?
It's a house now, right where the body was found. It turned into a yard and a house.
Oh, okay. So they carried the body away from the driveway into the adjacent bean field and laid him on his stomach. So do you know how big Arthur was? A small man, wasn't he?
Um, he was pretty average. After this, I can send you the autopsy report if you want. He was a I couldn't tell you the exact height, but he wasn't short or anything, and he was pretty stocky.
But would she have been able to carry out, you
I
know,
don't think Mary Ann herself would be able to carry it out because Mary Ann was pretty small.
but with the Ramsbottom, she could help.
Yeah, probably.
Now, you mentioned the autopsy. Do you have that handy?
It's in my email somewhere.
Okay, that's okay. If you don't have it handy, no problem. We can get into that later.
Yeah.
So they carried the body away from the driveway, and Arthur came to during all this and worked one of his hands free. So there was probably a struggle then of some sort.
Yes. There was evidence of a struggle.
Okay. And Arthur was shot 4 times with the 38 to 357 caliber handgun as he lay on the ground. Now he was shot with the 38. We do know that, don't we? I think that was in one of the reports. And since as he was laying on the ground, and if they had to shoot him 4 times, he must have been rolling around. They must have missed the head. The last one was the kill shot.
Yes, I am not 100% sure if I believe he was shot there, though.
Yeah. So he disappeared on a Friday night, but Marianne didn't tell the Lyles that Arthur was missing until Sunday morning. And that's strange to me.
Yeah.
That's strange. And it definitely makes it look like she really had no feelings at all, no compassion for Sheila and Michael, waiting, not telling them.
Yeah. Sheila went to the house to see, to comfort Mary Ann. Because you would think Mary Ann would be pretty upset that her husband is missing.
Yeah.
Well, when Sheila gets to the house, Mary Ann asks her what she's doing there, and she said, my dad is missing. And Mary Ann said, well, while you're here. And so she made a bed up for Sheila and didn't talk to Sheila for the rest of the night, even though Sheila was in the house. Isn't that odd? She acted like it was some type of inconvenience, and she, had other stuff to do. And
So Sheila spent the night with Marianne before she was told this?
as soon as Sheila found out that her dad was missing, she went to Mary Ann's house, the one that she shared with Arthur. she went to the house, and Marianne just acted like it was some type of annoyance, inconvenience to have this unexpected visitor. And
Yeah.
so she made up a bed for Marianne made up a bed for Sheila, and then didn't talk to Sheila for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
You would think you'd have some type of explanation, like, I talked to your dad at 6:30 p.m. and there was no sign of distress or anything like that. There's none of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Lyles found this highly unusual, especially since Arthur had a close relationship with them. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So after the murder was discovered, Bruce Lyle began to conduct his own investigation because the police appeared to be doing very little. Yeah, that sounds like the Logan
Yeah.
County Police, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so Bruce is Sheila's husband.
Yeah. So do you know how long he actually conducted his investigation?
I think it's kind of like the way Sheila is, like, continuing to, search for the truth until you take your last breath. But I don't know how long, like, an active
Yeah.
investigation is going.
Yeah. Thomas Grant and I talked quite a lot about that in their investigation last week, and we're going to be talking about it again in a couple of weeks because they really put in a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really did. And they've done a lot better job than the police or the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
So the Lyles couldn't believe that the police never questioned any of the family members, and they seemed to ignore the physical evidence of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't get any more irresponsible than that. I mean, for a police department or a sheriff's department, I mean, you
Yeah.
would both would have investigated.
Yeah. I'll before this episode is over, I'll tell you what I think happened. But I think it was a lot of teamwork, and that's why there was very little investigation.
Yeah, there had to be a lot of teamwork involved in covering all of it up. Yeah.
Yes.
So the Lyles felt that the discovery of Arthur's body revealed many clues which were not explored by the police. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the discovery of the red Volkswagen with the spare set of keys in the ignition was also a significant piece of evidence that was presented at the trial but ignored. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand how they could. Like, I want to know, did they ask Marianne about it at all? Like, because today I used my spare set of keys because my kiddos lost my normal keys, and they lost the keys in the car. So after I got to work, I looked down at my floorboard and I realized, oh, there's my main set of keys. So I was driving with my spare set of keys. Was Marianne ever asked about that? Like, did Arthur, was he not able to find his set of keys, but then it turned out like he had left it in his car or something? I don't know. I like that could be a huge clue, but
Well,
there's no explanation for it.
well, they said his keys were in his pocket.
Yeah, one was in his pocket, the other was in his ignition or in his car. So
Remember, Kathy's keys in the ignition.
yeah, it just didn't make any sense. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, the whole thing's messed up, no doubt.
Yeah.
And then the Lyles received an anonymous letter about a year after the trial that named Marianne Smith and Dean Ramsbottom as being the real murderers and speculated that the Logan County District Attorney's Office was responsible for the cover-up. Yeah, I'm sure they were.
Yes.
Uh, and this is a good time to say that this is a theory here we're talking about. None of this was ever proven.
Yes, yeah.
And I want to say that especially for the Ramsbottom daughters who are still alive, and they hate to hear things like this, but I just want them to understand we're not accusing this. This is just a theory.
Yeah.
Have you read that anonymous letter? I mean, I know you've heard about it, but have you read the actual letter?
Yes, when I went to Sheila's house, I read the letter. So I read the actual letter, and then I took pictures of the letter and I put them in my video. So
I would love to see the actual letter itself. I don't recall if I've ever seen it or not. Not necessarily the handwriting, but it typed out where I could read it. If you have that and you can send it to me sometime, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the letter was sent anonymously to the Lyles with a Bell Fountain postmark, and it cites the theory that George Skates was framed for the murder of Walter Smith by two liars, Jimmy Rogers and Danny Stanley. Well, yeah, we know that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely were liars because nothing they said made any sense.
Yeah, and then Danny Stanley was like, okay, never mind. I was just lying. And then he got in even more trouble than what he was in to begin with. But it was just.
Well, I guess he didn't get out of prison then, did he?
Danny?
Yeah.
I think he didn't get out of prison right away like Jimmy did. But he got out of prison eventually.
Yeah. So the Lyles speculate that the anonymous author is a Bell Fountain police officer named Junior Garwood. Now he was a friend of the family, right? Junior was.
Yes.
Now is he also the one that identified the body of Arthur?
Yes.
Because we know that the family never seen it after he was killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's see, I lost my place here. So there are many other twists and turns that the author explains in the letter that relate to the involvement of Marion and Logan County officials as instruments in a cover-up conspiracy. The author of the letter explains the basic motives for this conspiracy as follows. And is this the group thing you were talking about, the cover-up?
So yes, the Arthur was pressing charges on Kathy, and then he was also pressing charges on that high-powered attorney's son. And he had that black book where he was writing down who was getting medicine from great drugs when, and just keeping track of all of that. And that black book was never found after he was murdered. So I think it was a group of the high-powered officials in the town with between his wife having the affair, the high-powered attorney, and whoever was stealing the drugs from the drugstore and selling the guns out of the back of the store. I think they all teamed up together to get some dirty work done.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people wanted Arthur out of the way, didn't they?
Yes, unfortunately so, because he was a really good person.
Yeah. So reading on, it says that Arthur Smith's murder was considered a high-profile crime for the Bell Fountain area. Yeah, I'm sure it was. That's probably the biggest thing that happened in Bell Fountain for a long time.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's still talked about today.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Smith was well known and liked by the citizens of Bell Fountain, and his murder did not settle well with the God-fearing people of Logan County, Ohio. Yeah.
hmm
Was he a member of a church?
I don't think I ever talked to Sheila about their religion.
See, there was a lot of pressure on District Attorney Doug McGillivray by Logan County citizens to solve the crime. McGillivray was running for re-election during the investigation of the murder, and he needed to get the case solved. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he was willing to do whatever it took, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he didn't care how he got it done, who he had to hurt, and who he had to get to lie, and who he had to set up for the murder. So another motive expressed by the author was to cover up for the real murderers, one of who was Bell Fountain police officer, and blamed someone who was considered expendable, George Skates.
Yes. And George was somebody that a lot of people wanted to get out of the way also.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. It's funny because even just today at work, one of my coworkers was asking me about my visit with George. And I was talking about it, and then somebody overheard and said, "Oh, are you talking about George Skates? I love him." And just was like, just telling me these good memories he had with George. And
Really?
so that situation with, us losing George here in Marion is also really upsetting.
So do the majority of the people in that area, you think, that are they convinced that George was framed, or?
I have never heard one person say they think George killed Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to people who have said terrible things about George, and then I bring up the Arthur Smith murder, and they're like, "Well, no, he didn't do that," but and they have
Yeah.
other stuff to say. And then I have people who, really like George, and they say, he could never kill somebody. That's just not who he is. So
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. See, and he goes on to say George Skates was a thorn in the side of both Marion and Logan County officials, and they wanted him out of their jurisdiction. So he got around, didn't he? Because
Yeah.
Marion County is about what, 35 or 40 miles from Logan County, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a distance.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said it's a distance.
So I think we covered last time we talked that George was wanting to start selling marijuana in Logan County also, and that really pissed off Doug McGillivray because he was selling marijuana, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those marijuana rivalries.
Yeah, yeah. When James Rogers was finally caught during the crime spree, the Marion and Bell Fountain police officials planted a story in the mouth of the liar Rogers
Mhm.
and motivated him with promises of immunity from prosecution. Boy, they did. They motivated him real good, didn't they?
Yeah, I've never heard of somebody who was serving time in prison and was able to go to family functions still.
Yeah,
That I was really confused. I was like, are we talking about Jimmy Rogers being in prison right now?
yeah, yeah. That's just wild. They did. They just kind of give him the key to the city, didn't they?
Yeah, I was like, he probably went back to prison with, cotton candy in one hand and a
Yeah,
lollipop in the other hand. Like,
Said, you wouldn't believe what I told them fools. They believed it.
Yeah.
So the letter alleges that Rogers told his story to the Federal Bureau of Investigation because some of the crimes that he and Skates had been involved in were committed out of state. The FBI apparently did not believe Rogers' story and refused to prosecute Skates.
Yeah.
That says a lot right there. If the FBI won't even take the case.
Yeah, imagine that. The FBI didn't believe Jimmy Rogers.
Yeah. So months later, McGillivray decided to prosecute Skates on his own after finding another liar, Danny Stanley, to back up Rogers' story. And Stanley was never called to testify because McGillivray decided that Stanley would mess things up. So Stanley initially said that Skates was in on it, and then after a while he changed his mind, didn't he?
Yeah, so I think the way I took it when I was reading it was Jimmy was like, "Hey, this is what happened. Can you let them know?" Danny did go and say, "Okay, yes, this is what happened." But then Jimmy was like, "No, it was actually all a lie, blah blah blah." And Danny was like, "Wait, what?" But also, a little background was Jimmy Rogers was also sleeping with Danny Stanley's wife at the time.
Yeah.
So there's also Danny was like, "Hey, this guy is just messed up every which way. I don't want to be a part of it."
Yeah. Well, Vicky says hi, so hi, Vicky. And Vicky also says you need to discuss the Moody case. I was told by someone who they believe did the murders, and I figured that's why it was only investigated for 2 hours. Of course, they wanted the case closed. We're not talking about the Moody case tonight, Vicky. We're talking about the Arthur Smith murder and the different theories surrounding that. So,
I do have the Moody Massacre video on my page.
okay, there you go, Vicky.
Yes, if you're interested in that.
Okay. The author of the letter also claims that Chief Police Paul Harvey, I think that name is always really John Harvey, isn't it? I think's his name. Gets credit for just happening across the body of Arthur Smith on the routine search of the area. The author believes that Harvey knew all along where the body was because Smith turned up missing. Harvey suspected Ramsbottom. Now that's interesting. The chief of police also suspected Ramsbottom. That says a lot right there.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. The author speculates that Harvey confronted Ramsbottom and he broke down and confessed everything. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know that Ramsbottom and the chief had to have a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially about even before Arthur was killed, because he was
working there.
working there and dating one of the wives of one of the prominent citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So the letter goes on to explain all of the details as to why Harvey was motivated to produce the cover-up and implicate George Skates in the murder. There is even speculation that District Attorney Doug McGillivray was unaware of the Ramsbottom conspiracy and actually believes Skates was a murderer. I don't believe that part.
No, I don't either.
McGillivray knew exactly what he was doing. As far as I'm concerned, he was a lot dirtier than George Skates ever was.
Yeah, I would be more scared to go talk to Doug McGillivray than I wasn't scared one bit to go talk to George Skates.
Well, he was kind of locked up. I mean,
Yeah.
Did you get to see I mean, was you in the room with him or did you have to talk to him through glass?
We were in the same room. Yep.
Okay,
We were able to shake hands and we hugged twice. So
okay. Well, I'm sure that cheered him up.
I hope so.
Yeah. So it says the letter addresses the issue regarding Art Smith's suspicions and thefts are being committed regularly at Rinks. Reportedly, Smith believed that employees were stealing. The author states, as a matter of fact, that Bell Fountain police officers were entering the store at night on a regular basis and taking what they wanted. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's what the police were doing.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit if that was true.
Yeah. So that was nothing. Wow. There's nothing good you could say about the police back then.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there were some good ones. I'm sure there were. I don't know how many police officers they had back then. Probably not a lot, but
Yeah, there's always good police officers, but there's always
yeah,
the
yeah. I like to believe that most of them are good. I hope that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I have a
Makes
lot.
me feel better to believe that.
Yeah, I have friends that are police and sheriffs, so
Yeah. So the author of the letter seems to have a lot of detailed information about the privileges provided to James Rogers while housed in the Bell Fountain Jail awaiting the trial, and also stated that the author's source of information had been discovered and that source was in a heap of trouble. Yeah, I imagine that letter did Bruce and Sheila ever mention that to anybody on the police department, you think, after that?
I'm not entirely sure. I know I asked Sheila, one of the first questions I asked her was, how can you live in this town when you can't trust the police? And Sheila said, well, it doesn't matter where I go, I'm never going to trust the police.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know if this mistrust happened immediately or, 1 year, 2 year. But it wouldn't surprise me if Sheila never did take it to the police because of the mistrust.
Yeah. Well, what's your theory?
I think that Arthur had filed the charges against the high powered attorney's son. And they got to the police station, and Dean Ransbottom saw it. And along with the other cops, they were just like, man, why is this guy, even bothering? He keeps filing these reports because Arthur was done with the games and he was filing police report after police report. And what were they going to tell him? No, like you can't
Yeah.
do that. Like you can't do that. So he was filing these police reports, and um the attorney is talking to the police like, hey, is there any way you can get my son off the hook? And we still don't know who was stealing the drugs from Gray Drug Store and who was selling the guns illegally. Um, so that could have been a very skilled criminal. They could have got with that guy or girl. Um, hey, can you help us do this dirty work and we'll make sure you never get caught? And Marianne, of course, was having the affair with Dean Ransbottom. So, hey, your daughter won't get charged if we could murder Arthur on this Friday. And, so she made it an average Friday, made dinner, which was the knockwurst that just so happens to be sold at Rink's department store.
Yeah.
And I think that Arthur was probably ambushed in his house by multiple people.
Yeah.
And it was just a bunch of teamwork to get it to cover up and everything.
Yeah. Vicky says, I feel just awful for George. His whole life was stolen. Now that's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. So this day that Sheila lost her son or her father, um, George's kids also lost their dad too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is very heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of people hurt by this.
Hmm.
Now, George has how many kids? Three? Does he have three or four kids?
Um, oh goodness.
I know he has at least three.
Um, 5, I think.
Okay. Is he in contact with any of them?
Yes, his daughter and him talk every day.
Good.
Um,
Good.
and I think that might be the only one.
Yeah. And Vicky says that's really bad for the prosecutor to allow the snitch to be given gifts and promises in exchange to take down George. Shows you how corrupt our system is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true, Vicky. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And Vicky says, watch your page. I don't know if she's addressing that to me or you. Um, this is mine right here. So go ahead and tell what yours is.
What is it?
What's your page?
Oh, it's on YouTube. It's just Miranda Hundley. Miranda Hundley. And it's a true crime channel.
Okay.
Yeah, I think all the George skates is under the playlist that's called My Hometown Horrors because George is from my hometown, and his story is a horror story.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's really sad.
Yes, but he is still such a very he is such a fun person to talk to, very uplifting. Even though his story is so horrific, he still stays so optimistic. And I sat down and talked with him for 3 hours, and we never ran out of something to talk about.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. The whole visit was wonderful.
Well, he doesn't associate with the other prisoners, does he?
No, he stays in his cell all by himself, and he doesn't even go outside. It's very sad.
So I'm sure he does have a lot to say when he gets to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yes, we talked about everything from uh religion to he wanted to be a social worker because he wanted to work with kids and keeping kids off of the street, but unfortunately that was taken away from him. And
Yeah.
um so we talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure you did.
He talked a lot about how much he loves Sheila. He talks to Sheila quite a bit, so
Yeah.
that made me happy.
Yeah. How's Sheila doing? Somebody told me that she's been sick in and out of the hospital.
I haven't got an update in a couple of days. I normally text George's daughter about it, but I
Yeah.
haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah. Sheila's a sweet lady.
She is. I adore her.
Yeah. And she and Michael and all the George's relatives all deserve some kind of truth and closure.
Yes, they absolutely do.
So I hope somehow, some way, someday that happens.
I hope so.
Well, Miranda, do you have anything else you want to throw in there for tonight, or do you want to say we've covered what we need to cover for tonight?
I think we covered quite a bit. Um,
Yeah. Well, next week, my guest is going to be Elizabeth Martin. You know her, and we'll be talking about the Lucasville riot and how George Capes also was framed for 3 murders there.
Yes, Elizabeth is awesome too. So I will be tuning in for that.
Yeah, she'll be glad to talk with her. Uh, but yeah, George, you know, he really has had his whole life stolen. You
It,
know,
it is very, very sad.
yeah, it's one of them cases. If it wasn't for bad luck, he wouldn't have any, right?
It is.
Yeah. Well, all right, Miranda, thank you very much for being with me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it too. Have a good night.
All right, you too, and have a great weekend. And thanks everybody for tuning in to Friday Night Conversations. Glad that you tuned in and hope that you will come back next week and we'll have an exciting show for you. And as I said, we'll be talking about the Lucasville riot that happened at Lucasville Prison back in 1993. And there was 5 people that were brought up on charges for murdering some people there, and George Cates was one of those unfortunate souls that got framed there for that. And even though he didn't kill anybody there. And Vicky says, did you see the letter a certain crazy lady wrote to George that said he had evidence that would exonerate him, but he had to cover her like she loved him enough, everybody, including his family? Well, I'm not going to get into that, Vicky. That don't go there. I don't want to do any mudslinging here, but thank you very much, Vicky, for being here tonight. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate everybody who joined in, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend, and God bless, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.